In a world of business complexity, execution is everything. This is JD and the Brain, where failure was not an option and performance isn't accidental. Let's get to work.
Welcome to JD and the Brain, the practice of business where leadership theory meets operational reality. I'm Dr. T. Wiles Fowler, and alongside me, as always, is my co-host, JD Cecilia. On this podcast, we take leadership concepts out of the classroom, off the bookshelf, and put them where they belong in the real world. We explore what works, what doesn't, what actually it takes to lead people, to build organizations, and to turn good leadership theory into operational reality. And tonight's guest fits that mission exceptionally well. We are pleased to have my mentor, Dr. Aidan Brown, author, speaker, philanthropist, self-made business leader, and coach who has dedicated much of his work to practicing and advancing servant leadership. Dr. Brown's leadership philosophy is rooted in empathy, strategic thinking, purposeful influence, and a simple but powerful belief. Leadership ultimately has to be about people. Through his speaking, coaching, organizational work, he equips leaders with the mindset, skills, tools, and perhaps more importantly, the courage to lead with purpose, integrity, and compassion. As a speaker, Dr. Brown has connected with diverse audiences across corporate, educational, nonprofit, faith-based, and community settings. His objective goes beyond delivering another leadership message. He seeks to inspire change, ignite meaningful conversation, and move leaders towards intentional action. And that commitment to service extends beyond the workplace. He is deeply involved in philanthropy with a particular focus on education, youth empowerment, and community growth. His work reflects his conviction that true leadership isn't ultimately demonstrated by position or title, but how we serve and develop others. He's also the founder and president of the Association of Doctors of Strategic Leadership Professionals, building a community of scholar-practitioners committed to moving leadership research beyond academia into meaningful real-world application. He has been featured in Orlando Voyager magazine and the Executive Diary magazine. So tonight we're sitting down with somebody who approaches leadership from several perspectives as a scholar, a business leader, a coach, a philanthropist, and perhaps more importantly, a true practitioner. That's exactly why he's here on JD and the Brain. Dr. Aidan Brown, welcome to the Praxis of Business. How are you?
Thank you for that introduction, Dr. Fowler, and good evening to your viewers and listeners. Good evening, JD. Thank you for having me. I'm doing well.
So tonight we continue our journey through the TRAIN model of teamwork, and we've arrived at the A. That's assist. So T, teach, tell, R, review, A, assist, I, involve people, and nominate them for promotion. So each step represents a progression in the relationship between the leader, human resources, the individual, and the work. And the sequence matters. By the time we reach assist, we've already taught the individual what they need to know. We've established expectations. We have reviewed their understanding and their work. We've identified where they're strong, where there may be opportunities for improvement, and where maybe additional development might be needed. Now we begin making an important transition to this servant leadership. We move from primarily teaching the work to helping the individual take ownership of the work. That's assist in a nutshell. And I think one of the simplest ways to describe the assist phase is it means coming alongside someone without taking over. Now that sounds simple, but for leaders, it can actually be one of the most difficult parts of developing people. Why? Because experienced leaders, they generally know what to do. They recognize the problem. They see the mistake developing. They know the answer to the question. And sometimes they just simply step in and do it themselves because they could do it faster, cleaner, and actually with less risk. But talent development requires something different from us. If every time someone struggles, we step in and solve the problem for them, we may be creating excellent short-term performance while creating long-term dependence. We got the job done, but have we developed the person? That's the question we're going to talk about tonight. And then on the other extreme, we make the opposite mistake. We teach someone something, review it with them, and assume they got it. I showed you how to do it. You're on your own. But development doesn't normally work that way either. So tonight we're going to talk about the assist. It's the space between instruction and interdependence. That's where the concept in the CEO stamp of approval called assist lives. So JD, what do you think of all that stuff about assist, and how was your week?
My week was great. I'm up in Spokane, Washington, and I don't know if you've been watching the news at all, but this is the first time in over 100 years we've had a fire in the city. Wiped out about 800 houses and thousands of acres of forested areas around the city. Very fortunate. My house was about a quarter of a mile where it stopped. It came up to a golf course, which, is well irrigated and whatnot, so the fire couldn't go through to my house. And my barn up on my property, I've cleared a bunch of brush away from it, over the last couple of years, and I put gravel in there, so there's no way the fire could go onto my building. It has a metal roof and it's metal siding, so it's relatively safe. But other than those natural disasters, I'm doing pretty good. So thanks for asking.
So we've got the whole America covered. We got Florida, Ohio, and Washington.
Yeah.
So we got the nation covered. So
Yes.
Dr. Brown, Aidan Brown, is my mentor. He signed up. I asked to be a part of the executive mentor program at school as I was nearing the end, and he volunteered, and we've developed such a great relationship. I am a part of the Association of Strategic Leaders that he founded, and I'm a committee member on the public relations. So welcome, Dr. Brown. How has your day been?
Well, it has been a crazy one. Meetings. I think this is the last one for today, I think. But it's quite interesting, very productive, I must say. And I'm honored to be a part of your show this evening, because one thing I often say as leaders, if you're called upon, you should be able to give an answer. So pretty much a good one. And what a good way to spend my Friday evening with yourself and JD. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, we are glad to have you. You have been an inspiration to me. So we have an executive producer. Her name is Annie. She is really smart, and she gave us an overview of our viewership and what was good and what was bad and what was ugly. And one of the things that she said, as JD remembers, was you got to help the audience know where they were, where you are, and where you're going. So we're going to try this little screen share thing here to see if this works. Can you guys see that?
That's beautiful.
Yes.
All righty. This is the CEO's stamp of approval. There are 5 steps. There are 4 inputs and are recommended to be in this order. Okay, so support is the first input, and it basically asks the question, how do I lead? How should I lead? Should I exhibit situational agility? And then teamwork is the train model. And that's how we place individuals. And then aptitude is, development and how people grow. And then ultimately morale is how do they relate to others? So our podcast basically follows this format. Okay. So our first 5 episodes were on the leader, educator, administrator, delegator, screener. Now we are on the teamwork piece with the train model, and we are here at the assist. So this is where we've been, and this is kind of where we're going. So I just wanted to kind of share that with the listeners. And the first 5 episodes, we looked at leadership. Now we're in the middle of human resources and how we recommend human resources intervene. And today's focus is coming alongside of the individual, but not doing the work for them. So I'm going to turn it over to JD. He's got some questions for you, Dr. Brown, and we're looking forward to the conversation.
Welcome, Dr. Brown. Happy to have you. I'm always interested in hearing other perspectives. As I look back over my several decades, I've been in leadership positions, formally or informally, probably since about the 7th or 8th grade. So my first question to you, as you look back at the way the world is changing at a very rapid pace, how have you seen the leadership approaches evolve to keep pace with the dynamic nature of our environment?
Well, one thing I must say, when you look at it, leadership must never remain static, right? And I know in Tim's book, and as we study on leadership, we always look at leadership agility and leadership being flexible. But in a world characterized by rapid technological advancement and global interconnectedness, the constant disruption of leadership flow requires effective leadership to be intentional, cultivating an adaptability spirit by which it embraces innovation. And as we look at the different aspects of leadership today, and in a world where technology is concerned, well, one of our greatest concern is that we have to keep up with what is going on with technology. We have to be adaptable, embracing the change, remain anchored in timeless values, and to consider things such as empathy, integrity, and more so servant leadership. In my book, reference in my book with Tim's book, right? It speaks about transformational leadership, and to your question, we have to focus more on what are we doing as effective leaders now, if we want to be effective. So look at transformation. We have to continuously put ourselves in a position to be learning, to challenge the conventional way of thinking and develop that mindset whereby our minds are mentally agile to deal with some of the challenges. I know some folks they tend to resist change and not welcoming what is coming, what is facing us with technology and advancement and all of that. But we have to leverage what we have as leaders. And it's a good thing that we have a program which is called strategic leadership, because it helps us to keep a diverse perspective of the world and to create meaningful impact and not lose sight as to what we are up against.
So I want to highlight a couple of words that you used in your last description, and one of them was transformational leadership. To me, that denotes and you used the word agility. To me, that denotes a leader who is aware of their environment and realizes they can't use the same recipe for every single group that they lead or every single task that they have. So let's put you in a scenario now where you've just been appointed as a leader for an organization, and you're about to meet the team for the first time. Knowing what you've just said about transformational and agility thing, what is the manner that you present yourself to the team the first time you meet them?
And that's a very good question. I'll approach that wearing my servant leadership hat, because a lot of people I've seen today and I've worked with, they assume leadership and they go in as the boss. It's my turf. I'm here to do this and get this done and get that done. But the approach that I would take, it's more of a servant heart. How can I make the team, the organization better? How can I enhance what they have in place and to build a culture whereby people feel as if they are a part of? And I often say this, that leadership, it's not an arrived at moment, it's a continuous learning journey. So if I'm going into such a situation, it's about how can I serve the team? How can I serve the organization? And what is it as a leader that I have to bring to the table? Because right now I'm offering myself for service.
Yeah, I think you run a very fine line. A servant leadership is obviously one that's going to be very appealing to the group that you're leading, but you also, as a leader, are responsible for results. And so there's kind of that mix that you have to balance between being the type of leader that gets results and also comes across as a servant leader. So my next question is how do you make that impact on the team as both a servant leader and someone who is driving this organization to better results?
Well, several ways that you can do that, right? Because leadership influence extends beyond organizational boundaries, right? Because every decision, every conversation, and every example either builds or diminishes trust. And one of the greatest thing is that as a leader, and going into the example that you mentioned earlier, and going into a situation, you have to earn the trust of your team and the organization. Going back to transformational leadership, it hones the intentionality, whereby it creates a positive ripple effect. And I believe that when you go into a situation as a leader to develop people, foster collaboration, and where you provide atmosphere where you encourage innovation, and more so investing in people, right? For the long term, not for the short term. That is a true measure of leadership, right? It reflects not merely what we look at as organizational outcome, but how people gain confidence and become better themselves. And one of the things that is, I must say, an important point is when you hold a leadership position, it's not about just working with people. One of the greatest things, just as you look at Christ in the Bible, he didn't bring them along the line like the fishers of men, the disciples. He actually showed them how to do this. So as a leader, how many leaders can we create below us that we can have these people to say, because of this person, I am who I am today? I remember my final days of project. It was a leadership development workshop that I had, and we had 7 participants. One was a warehouse lead, team lead, and another one was just a transport supervisor for a beverage distribution facility. And after that workshop in February, in March, both of them got promoted. One got promoted, the lead got promoted to operations manager, and the supervisor, she became transport manager. So at the end of it, as a leader and you hold a leadership position, how many leaders can we create under us, and how many leaders can we have to say, yes, this is because of this person, I am who I am today?
So what are some tactical things that you do to create leaders, on a day-to-day basis? How do you intervene to help create leaders?
Apart from the personal traits from a leadership standpoint, where you demonstrate humility, resilience, accountability, and genuine care, one of the things that not one of, but several stuff that a leader can do is look at two main things. Just look at two main things: coaching and mentoring. Because when you do go into an organization and think about people, you genuinely have to care for people in order to consider their best interests at heart. So when you when you go into a situation, you are automatically a coach. You're automatically a mentor. And the interesting part of that is understanding personalities. Because when you go into an organization, you don't work with people, you work with personalities. And you have different personalities to deal with. So that's when you know when you wear a coaching hat or a mentoring hat to deal with the situation.
So, excellent commentary on that topic. I find that very interesting. And it leads me to one of my next questions for you. I pulled a couple of words out of your description, and the first one I pulled out was trust. You said you had to build the trust, and I think that's a fundamental omission in a lot of organizations, is there isn't that level of trust, and that's so important because that leads to the next word that you used was teamwork. So when an employee or someone that works in your company trusts you, when you have to make the decisions as a leader, there's not that immediate question like, well, what's us all about? Like, well, why are we doing this? It's like, you're the leader. They trust you, and they will, comply with whatever it is that you're needing them to do. But what I was going back to was when you have that kind of atmosphere, it leads to positive results. You start to hit the higher performance. You start to hit your goals. As you mentioned, 2 of the people that you were mentoring got promoted. And they don't get promoted unless they show results, because you don't just promote people. So that, to me, that leads into the improved performance. I don't know if you've watched the series The Chosen at all, but a lot of what you just mentioned, I see in how Jesus was mentoring and coaching his disciples. And the first thing that they struggled with was trust. It's like, can I really trust what he's saying? Can I walk out on the water? Can I heal this person? Yeah, they're very human. I really appreciated that aspect about it, because a lot of times people have this misperception that they were perfect people and that they just did whatever he said and believed whatever he said immediately. So I appreciate your comments on that, which leads to kind of the next question, which is, and you kind of already touched on it, and that is the interactions that you have at the personal level with these people. How does that impact how they respond to what you're asking them to do and how it meets some of their needs? And you mentioned the word personality. I think that's a great lead into your answer. How relevant are your interactions with the team members and effectively supporting their needs while at the same time accomplishing the performance objectives?
Okay, thank you. It requires leadership to be relevant. It requires myself, leaders, to be relevant, right? Because relevant leadership requires us to be intentional, to engage rather than have a routine conversation. We must listen actively, understand individuals, understand the personalities that we have to deal with, and to understand the organizational challenges, not the individual challenges, but the organizational challenges. Provide meaningful feedback. And when I say meaningful feedback, I mean genuine feedback. Put yourself into the person's shoes. Adopt their the leadership style to meet the demand of the evolving times. What we used to do 10 years ago, it's not the same thing, it's not the same approach that would work today. When you look at letting your leadership speak, because I often tell people if you're a leader in an organization, your team, your people should not feel fearful of you when they see you're coming. So instead of driving fear, let's replace that with having that human connection. Show them that you are human like them too. You eat food like them. You shower like them. You put on your pants one foot just like them. And let them know that you are not a robot. They are not robots, but you're human. Effective leaders remain visible, accessible, and emotionally present. And that's one of the things that we're lacking even in our personal lives, but on a wider scale. Emotional intelligence, right? Ensuring our interactions build what? Trust. So as we engage with our team members and the organization, are we encouraging trust? Right? One of the other things that is important, as the Maslow law mentioned, is psychological safety. And in today's world, are we being that agent of change where our employers feel psychologically safe? Earlier this week, I had a conversation with someone who they got a call Monday morning. Can you imagine showing up to work Monday morning and you got a call from HR to say, today's your last day. We are making your position redundant. And that just is just devastating. So we have to be human for once. Also, and share purpose while empowering employees to succeed, because one of the things that we've seen frequently is managers and supervisors, especially some supervisors, they're afraid to train and coach. They're afraid to mentor. They're afraid to groom their subordinates. Why? Because they're fearful that they're going to take their jobs. Now, true leadership should not be fearful. A genuine leader should not feel fearful if you train and coach your employee to become successful. And one of the greatest things I often say to people, if I can train, coach, mentor, and groom you to become something great, at the end of the day, I know I've done my job as a leader. Considering what's going on with the technology in this world today, yes, we have to think human-like as we engage with people.
I've lived long enough to see those that treated me fairly get theirs in the long run. Many, many, many times. I could rattle off half a dozen just off the top of my head. People that were, difficult and ugly, and I didn't trust them. They bordered on being unethical. And I've lived long enough to see that many of them, they reaped what they sowed, kind of thing. And when you're younger, you're gotta just trust that if you do the right thing, it'll work out for you. But JD and I are mature enough to know that stuff comes back at you. So I just want to echo what you said. Take care of people first, and don't worry about yourself per se. And good things will come to them and to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because and thank you for that, Dr. Fowler, because one of the things that I often, as I said earlier, if you remember in the conversation, when you are taking on a leadership role, are you taking on the role as self-flourishing or people flourishing? Yes, we know we take on a job because we need more money. We like the status quo that comes with the position and the title, but the true meaning of it is the life that you're going to impact. And just to highlight a point on trust, your team will never trust you if you can't walk the walk and talk the talk. And trust doesn't mean you make a decision, as JD mentioned earlier, and they trust your decision. But trust means, how is it that you are showing up to the people around you? Is your ego, your arrogance telling them that you know it all? I'm not going to trust you if your ego and your arrogance is just out there shouting out. But when you go with humility and show that you're human just like them, Jesus never had a church. He never go into a church building. He was on the highway and the byway. He was sitting with people eating and breaking bread. So how human are we as leaders that our people can trust us?
Yeah, and I think I've heard this definition over the years is that trust is formed by consistent behavior over time. And so when someone is acting in that capacity as a servant leader over time, it's not a one-shot deal. This is how that person is. That's part of who they are. I want to touch on one of the parts of your answer about being in their shoes is the term you used. And I use the phrase, see things from their perspective. It makes you a better leader because everybody, what they bring to the 8 hours leaves off the 16 hours that isn't part of what you see. And so knowing how that impacts how they form a significant advantage in being a servant leader, because you understand. Served in the Pentagon for a number of years, and almost everybody that worked there had some sort of challenging commute to get to work. I mean, it was like hours plus to get to work. So this person is arriving already stressed out, already 2 hours in just to getting traffic to get to work. And then you know what I mean? So understanding that about your environment is super important. And as you mentioned in your answer about, seeing things from their perspective, being in their shoes. So that kind of leads me to one of our last questions is how should leaders exemplify inclusive leadership that promote the well-being of the individuals, but also keeping your eye on the target? What's some of your observations or tactics or techniques for doing that?
Fundamentally, it's about people. It's about having a people-centered approach. And a few pointers: collaboration, encourage open dialogue, remove unnecessary barriers, invest in personal and professional growth. And when I say personal and professional growth, it would look not only, let's use this as an example, someone in your organization, I'll use this as an example. When I was doing my doctorate degree, I was told to complete the tuition reimbursement. And I said to them, I don't see doctorate on the form. It only has M masters. And the organization at the time, this is now where I looked at HR, that they're confused because HR don't really understand their role today. They confuse HRD with HRM. And the HR manager, after I sent all the documentation, all the links, all the information on the program, she responded and said, "Is this a true doctorate degree?" No, I did a speaking point on that. That's titled "The Fire That Formed Me," because that's one of the reasons. That is one of the main reasons why I am a go-getter and do what I do today. Because you have to prioritize people in an organization. Because without people, there's no organization. I often say this: without students in a classroom, there are no teachers. Without followers, there are no leaders. So an HR person can question someone's degree. It shows that they lack the empathy, they lack the emotional intelligence, and they lack the leadership integrity. And as an HR person, question should never be asked of you. So invest into personal and professional development. If I was in her shoes, I would have done it differently, because someone in your organization is studying a doctoral program, and your question is your first thought is to question it. As a leader, your thought is to investigate and invest in that person, because this is now you have potential within the organization, and you're going to lose it. So you have to look at. Go ahead.
I was going to say, when that happened, this is an interesting situation. When that happened, was there a moment in time where you had to fight what your initial response wanted to be?
Yes, but I learned earlier in my early years in my diplomatic life, because I served in government in my home country a few years ago, and I learned something from a lady that I was working with, the Honorable Costas. Before you respond, think about it. and then you respond. And I did respond. I did respond to the director. But one thing that showed me as an individual and as a leader, you're going to have these challenges. And not even as a leader, but as an individual, you're going to have these challenges. And these are the fire that actually help to form you. And just like gold, the process that gold go through, you're going to need this kind of fire. And it will motivate you to become a better version of yourself and to show them that this is how you do this. Because of her, I was able to create, I did a presentation on the Region Research Roundtable, HR Roundtable, and I spoke about HRD and HRM. And every time I get an opportunity, I share this with people. So it's about being fair as well, because when you have situations like this, you have to, as a leader, demonstrate fairness. And in that organization, there wasn't any fairness. There wasn't. So the servant leadership principle, cultivate environments where individuals and organizations can flourish.
Tim, that wraps up the questions I had. I'll
Okay.
turn it over to you.
Yeah, very good. I'm just trying to get up a video here. I don't know if this will work. If it doesn't, I'll just edit it out. No big deal.
The what series?
Rocky Balboa. Yo, Adrian. Yo,
No, I can't recall I've ever
You
seen
would-
it. How many
you
I
would
have?
you would know
You
it
better-
if you did. So
Yeah.
No,
Make a
we're
note to
showing our-
yourself.
yeah. So I'm going to play a clip that basically echoes exactly what you just said about the eye of the tiger. About
Fire.
thinking before you talk, but letting it motivate you, put the fire in your belly kind of thing. So let me see if we can do this thing. If not, maybe I'll just get Annie to tag it on the back of it, once she's doing her editing. So let me try this here. Also share audio. Yeah. Okay. So let's try this. Be interested in your reaction to this. So he's complaining to his dad about how he's not where he wants to be in life, and people at work are ugly to him. So I think you should be able to hear this. So this is father's response to his son about life, and hopefully we can get through all of this.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you got to be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you want to be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always going to love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life.
Wasn't that something? Can you take the hits and keep moving forward? I think that's what you were saying. I'm thinking maybe the lady meant to say, is this an honorary doctorate or something else? I don't know if she meant what she said. I think she was probably ignorant, but certainly does not show the sensitivity or the emotional intelligence that she should have shown in an HR position. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So we'll give you the last word. Dr. Brown, thoughts on today's podcast or anything you want to leave with us, sir?
Thank you, and I'm honored to share. Let me first say thank you again for having me, and I was happy to share with you guys this evening. I want to share or my final thought actually is for leaders. If you are going to take on a leadership role, remember it's not about you. It's about the people that you are going to serve, not lead, but to serve. Think about this. You go there with a human flourishing mindset, whereby you want to create the impact and the influence that you want to leave a positive legacy on the life of those you leave behind. Thank you.
Well, very good work, sir. Robert Greenleaf wrote Servant Leadership in the 70s, and he's definitely had an impact on a whole generation. So thank you for being with us tonight, and we really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you for having me.
Support the mission. Align your team. Build capability. Leverage Teaming Plus for alliances. Because performance doesn't happen by accident. This has been JD and the Brain.